Before we start, I want to name the question that's been sitting with me for years and that I know a lot of special education teachers carry quietly. What matters more? Meeting grade level standards or meeting students where they are and building them up? Are we teaching to meet standards or are we teaching students? And what happens when those two things don't align? This is Processing Out Loud, Episode 2. I teach in a mild, moderate special day class. My students don't just come to me to learn academic content. They come to learn how to exist in a classroom, how to regulate, how to interact, how to be independent. Some of my students stay with me for up to 3 years. That means I don't just meet them once, I grow with them over time. There's a quote that's in Developmental Psychology by Vygotsky and Piaget. It says, learning is not linear. That means progress doesn't move in straight lines. It loops, it pauses, sometimes it moves sideways before it moves forward. So my students, they don't always just move in a straight forward progressing line. Sometimes we do have regression. Sometimes we have roadblocks. Sometimes we have to take a completely different path to loop back around because we found something that we need to re-go over that has since been lost. So in a mild, moderate setting, we're required to teach grade level standards that are taught in general education classrooms, even when the students may be working several years below their grade level or when their maturity and social development don't match their assigned grade. And there's this assumption built into policy that exposure equals access. But in reality, exposure without support is not access. Just because I'm touching on general ed standards to my students does not mean that they have the same access as their general education peers. Putting a student in front of grade level material without the scaffolding they need doesn't make them more capable. It makes them more frustrated. And this is especially challenging when I have students who are 3 or more grade levels below where their peers are. With this knowledge and with the experience I have, and because I have students for multiple years, my teaching is intentionally developmental. So this is kind of how I like to structure it if I have them for all 3 years. The first year, I build trust, I assess, I teach without heavy rigor. The second year, I increase the expectations and I layer standards intentionally. So by the time I get to year 3, I really push the rigor, I really push the independence, and I'm getting them prepared for their next placement. Rigor is not about speed, it's about depth. That means rigor doesn't mean that we're rushing through the content just to try to catch them up to their peers. It means that they're ready in their own way at their own pace. One of the hardest parts of special education is being told to change routines that are working. And it's often by people who don't see the day-to-day reality of our classrooms. Curriculum gets adopted without consideration for self-contained settings with students with disabilities. Policies are made far from the students they affect. And every year, I have to adapt my teaching and my style of routines and structure in the class and tailor them towards the students that I have that given year. Because every year is different. Every group of students is different. And the dynamics that they bring with all of their different ages and their grade levels and their academic levels and their social levels, all of that mixed in together, teaching them similar content year after year, I have to adjust. And teaching is only part of my job. There's also IEP writing, progress monitoring, data collection, meetings, compliance, documentation. All of that is ongoing. On top of that, special education teachers are still held to the same expectations as general education teachers with the report cards, district testing, state testing, etc. So when everything is a priority, nothing truly is. And that's where burnout lives. It's so hard and it's so frustrating when I'm told that I can't do all these IEP related tasks during instructional time. But the instructional day begins when the bell rings and students enter class, and it ends when the last bell rings at the end of the day and they're dismissing. So when in there, other than my own free time during my lunch, do I have to do this type of work that every special educator struggles to get done? It's almost like the expectation is to do work on your free time, on your lunch, on your weekends, in your evenings, on holiday breaks, and all of that is unpaid time. If that's the expectation, it's no wonder special educators are getting so burned out and leaving. Which is a sad truth, because most special educators get into the field because of passion, because we really care about what we do. We really genuinely care about our students and want to have them succeed and have good futures. And many of my students are dually identified. So that means they have a disability and they are classified as, quote, English learners, or what we now try to call emergent multilingual learners. This is very challenging because these students are expected to pass reclassification tests to remove that label, tests that are challenging even for fluent English speakers. On top of that, students who don't have a disability that hinders their learning capabilities or has them have to have additional accommodations in order to successfully pass the test. Tests can measure performance, but it can't measure potential. And that's what special educators see in their students, is the potential. So it's really hard to see year after year my students not pass this test and stay stuck in a classification that they don't belong in because this test is just measuring their performance. So when we combine disability with language acquisition, we create barriers that are nearly impossible to overcome. And speaking of labels, labels are meant to provide support. But when students live inside them long enough, those labels start to define how others see them and how they see themselves. So what pains me the most isn't just the labels, it's the language that grows around them. And that language doesn't just come from students, it comes from adults. And that language doesn't just describe students, it shapes how we treat them. And when students hear that, they start to believe it says something about who they are, not just what they need. And I want people to see my students the way that I see them. I want people to see them as thinkers, as problem solvers, kids who are learning, not kids who are failing. Just because they learn differently doesn't mean that they're not learning. Support needs are not character traits. These are just things that we use as tools to help us learn, and we all use them. Which brings me back to the part where I know the standards, I study the standards, I'm trained in the standards, I understand what I'm expected to teach. But the standards tell me the what, curriculum gives me a suggested how. But I am the professional responsible for adapting that how. The curriculum is a tool, not a script. Adapting the curriculum isn't lowering the expectations. It's making expectations reachable for my students. I don't make any of my instructional decisions based on feelings. I read, I research, I collect data. I observe my students, and I observe their growth over time. I know when a student is ready to be pushed, and when pushing would do more harm than good. Progress is not always loud, fast, or testable, but it is still progress. Sometimes progress looks like staying regulated through a lesson. Sometimes it looks like attempting a task that they avoided last month. Sometimes it looks like confidence. So when I'm asked to prioritize rigid pacing over responsive teaching, I have to ask, who is that serving? When I'm told to change routines that my students are used to and comfortable with, and I see progress and I see results, what is that doing? Because my responsibility isn't just to the standards, it's to the students sitting in front of me. Meeting students where they are is not the opposite of high expectations, it's how we get there. I want my students to be seen for who they are and who they are becoming, not who they're compared to. And I want the systems around them to trust the professionals who know them best. So I'll leave you with this question. What is something that a teacher did to make you feel supported as a learner? Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll see you in the next episode.